I guess one of the things, there's so many things that I was thinking as I was listening, but maybe just a little bit about the program first. Really beautiful program, thank you both for that. And just wondering, when you're planning a program, what goes into your thinking? Are you thinking text, storyline, colors? I'm just wondering how you, Reggie, I think you put this one together, so let's start with you. How do you go about planning your programs?
Well, that's a good question. Basically, with this program, when we decided on the theme of raise the voice, I thought about it and said, well, let me go back and look through the ode itself. And it's like, oh, there's nothing for alto, but the symphony is incredible, and it's a great theme to use. I was always taught to try, when you program a concert or a recital or anything like that, it's always important to make it sort of autobiographical and add sort of a journey, some sort of narrative in the program itself, to give it some sort of life, so that, one, you're interested and there's some sort of flow, but also that the audience or the listeners also feel a bit of onus, a bit of understanding of what's going on and of who I am, and feeling a little closer. Because I always hate the idea of that fourth wall. I always feel like, no matter the concert, no matter the location, you come in strangers, but you leave family. And I think the programs kind of give that sort of idea. So basically, off of Raise the Voice, I thought to just focus on various things that I think kind of underpin what makes humanity kind of special and what makes it great. So the idea of thinking of nature and love, of course, and the idea of the divinity, the idea of music itself, the greatest gift I think of, and also the idea of the end of sanctity, of that we hold things sacred ourselves, and it kind of goes through that kind of journey. Typically, and I'm jawing on a bit, typically I like to bookend concerts with both In My Solitude and O Solitude. But typically I swap them, because O Solitude as an introvert it's the national anthem for introverts. And I love the idea of starting a concert with the Duke Ellington, of just the kind of despair and sadness of being alone, but finding your way to the end and finding that peace, finding that love of solitude. But I swapped it this time, one, to fit the program, and one, to say that, maybe I'm going to be a little sad to leave here and leave y'all. It's been a few years since I've been to Vancouver and worked with y'all, so it's been great.
Thank you. Don't worry, we won't wait years to have you back. That's for sure. And it's beautiful what you said about the program and how you thought of it. And there was one thing that struck me, is that the pieces, even though they were sometimes intense, and even though some of this Baroque music has a little bit of a melancholic feel sometimes, like the O Solitude, but there was so much joy in your singing, in your presentation, in your voice, and we just felt it. I'm just feeling like I just had a holiday. So that's extraordinary. Another thing I just want to say before I reach out to you, Alex, is, you've got to be the best word painter singer that I know in this century. It is unbelievable. And I've never heard you sing in anything but English live, right, on stage. And so you started in English, and I'm like, yeah, this is this great art, and this guy word paints like crazy. But what's he going to be like in Italian? Or, and of course it was the same, exactly the same, just the same. I didn't even look at the words. I could just hear the story. Have you always done that from day one? Is it? It's like, did you just wake up singing that way? It's what every singer should do. You do it so beautifully.
I grew up, so I'm originally from Gainesville, Florida, and my family didn't allow me to listen to anything that wasn't produced or made by black people. I grew up with jazz and gospel and R&B, like Shirley Caesar, Sarah Vaughan. Really, my first and greatest teacher in Baroque singing was Ella Fitzgerald, easily. And just that kind of connection to the text, to the spirit that's in music. Once I became a countertenor and started singing Baroque music, I recognized that that camaraderie, that familiarity, that idea that Baroque music and jazz have that same idea where it just really focuses on just affect and life and spirit and all these incredible things. And so once I began singing, I really it was just second nature to do that sort of thing. And then of course later there was a guest professor at Florida State University, Anthony Rulli and Evelyn Tubb, and Tony and Evelyn basically kind of furthered that whole idea of finding the magicalism in everything and really bringing the music to life in a way that it deserves.
I had no idea that you'd worked a little bit with those two. Oh yeah, but yeah, I mean, absolutely, and makes me think that maybe when we look for singers in early music, we should go to the jazz department. You know, it's interesting, and also made sense because when you sang the Duke Ellington at the end of the concert, I thought, yeah, well, that's it. If singers sing words, you can sing any style. Because that's all you need. That's all. It was such a good singing lesson. Thank you. And now, of course, I just want to talk a little bit about improvisation with both of you because we heard so much inventing and wonderful things happening tonight, both in the keyboard and in your voice and your singing, and that extemporizing, I guess, also maybe comes from the same. You know, learning jazz, learning to jam, and you know, learning to blow, as they say. Yeah. And Alex, you've also got some training in jazz, don't you?
Yes, I do have some training in jazz, but I'm also a church organist, right? And that's the only field in classical music where the art of improvisation is still alive. And that's a sad fact, actually, because a lot of sources and treatises in the 18th century say, well, part of being a musician is being able to do exactly that, composing / improvising, so come up with something on the spot. I mean, it's a little more widely spread in our field, but I have to say that Reggie is really one of a kind in this way. Improvisation means that you do something different every time, and we rehearsed those pieces, and indeed, every bar is different every time. You must be a nightmare for recording engineers, yeah.
I'm an absolute horror.
Yeah. And in a way, it's trivial, of course, because not two snowflakes are the same, right? And there are not two anythings in the universe that are perfectly alike. But with you, it's a special case, and I often think, oh, I wish I could hear that again, you know.
Yeah,
but I know I won't.
Even the ornament that music for a while, when you come back, you'd never heard him do what he did tonight. It was so amazing. Oh my God, yeah, we've got that on recording, so it's okay. Yeah, you also arranged some of the pieces tonight, so improviser and composer, indeed. And do you compose music from scratch ever, Alex?
Yeah,
yeah,
I do.
Yeah?
I do, and I'm actually trying to make space in my life to do that more.
We look forward to more of that. Just on the instrumentation a little bit, we had very luxurious continuo tonight with the theorbo, the organ, the harpsichord, and the two bowed basses instrument. And I don't hear that often, the gamba and the cello playing together. Beautiful color. And then Eleanor picked up a different bow and played underhand. And when those two played together underhand on these different instruments, it was yet a whole other color. So I guess I just wanted to ask you, in the rehearsals or when you're planning the program, before the rehearsals even, how do you choose the instrumentation? How do you decide what instrument's going to play with which piece? Is it text-based, or just tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it's text-based, obviously. I believe it's certainly true for Baroque music, that motto of Monteverdi's, right? First the words, exactly, then the music. And I mean, that had a lot of implications. One thing that still startles me, actually, is that in Venice, for once, but in many places, the only thing about operas that was kept was the libretto. So the libretto was printed and even disseminated, but the composition and the staging and the costumes and all of that was just a one-season thing. So the composition was not even really looked at as a piece of art, if you want. It was just the poetry. It shows you a little bit of the hierarchy, you know, in the whole thing. But I believe it's true for all of music, in the way that I think music, difficult to find the right words, it wants to absorb the text. I think it has in itself that urge to be meaningful, if that makes sense. But it's abstract, of course, at the same time. And I think over the centuries, music learned in a way to speak. And while in Baroque music we have the help of the underlaying text, the idea is the same for romantic music or any kind of music. It's I think music is a gesture.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's true. Music needs to serve many times a storyline or a text. There was one other thing, Reggie, I wanted to touch on. Ignatius Sancho, and you spoke about him this evening, and that was wonderful to hear more about his life. I'm particularly fond of him because my father's name is Loyola, so Saint Ignatius of Loyola. So, but I just know that you've done a lot of research, and that even, I think there was a piece in The Guardian about you going to the UK and doing research there of composers of darker skin ending up working in London and other places in England. So it was wonderful to hear the Sancho tonight. And I wonder if you've unearthed other treasures and if you're still working on things, and if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're discovering there.
There are some things I can't really talk about yet. But we're kind of, there have been some various discoveries that regarding the various black musicians that existed in England in the 17th, 18th century. Obviously, because of the slave trade, because of plantations, there were many, not just slaves and servants, but also freed blacks who lived in England at that time. And there were ensembles that were entirely made of people of color, both freed and also slave ensembles. And there's apparently, we're kind of still trying to find this, but there is evidence that someone from the British Library discovered that there may have even been some pieces written by these ensembles, these slave ensembles. And so I'm working on that, and also just in general digging into the various treasures that exist in various archives and libraries and houses in the UK, and I'm looking to give them the voice that they haven't had for so long. There's so much there of varying kinds that it's almost sad that we've lived so long without it. The National Trust is part of the AHRC is the body that I'm working with. They basically fund all the libraries, museums, and around in England, but they also oversee the National Trust. And it's a National Trust that actually kind of spurned a lot of this, that they are really at the point where they want to tell the true stories, the true history of how some of these houses and palaces came to be. The fact that they were built on the backs of slaves. They're built by sugar. Even in Wales, built by slate quarry, workers like in Bangor. And so I'm doing my best to kind of dig through and see how best I can, through a musical lens, also give voice to the voiceless.
And so the music scores exist, and I wonder, like, the slaves that you're talking about who played together, were they the entertainment for some of the white folk? Do we know? Yeah, so a lot
some of that, some for themselves.
Some for themselves, of course, yeah. Well, we look forward to whatever you can't talk about right now. I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point. I just want to maybe just ask the audience if anybody has, yes, question.
I want to find out what it's like to sing at Carnegie Hall, which you did last year.
Practice, Alex. What was it like? It was just a very nice hall in a very loud city. No, it was wonderful. It was with Orchestra of St. Luke's, and it was Cantata 82, Ich habe genug, and just one of my favorites. And just the Perlman Hall is just incredible because you can just hear a pin drop. You can whisper, and everyone hears it. It's honestly one of the best halls I've ever sung in, other than this one, of course.
No comment. Any other questions? Yes, over there.
How did you become a countertenor? I know there's a lot of typecasting based on some classical music. And, did you encounter any of that? How did you become a countertenor?
How did I become a countertenor? Well, I was kind of told to do it. So before Florida State University, I was at the University of Florida in Gainesville, where I was born and grew up, and I sang in a barbershop quartet, and I sang the top tenor line. And so, being the nerds we were, we would sing songs and tags just around the music building. And one day, my professor, who had been training me to be something that might resemble a tenor or a baritone, who knows, happened to hear me singing this top line, which is basically an alto line. And so he waited till we finished. He came and grabbed my arm, dragged me up 3 flights of stairs, which is great, having asthma. And so I'm standing there in this office, this small office. He's at the piano. I'm standing here sweating. And he looks at me, then stares at the keyboard and just plays an E-flat major scale above middle C. And he says, "Sing this." And so I sang it the octave below, trying to be a good student. He said, "Nope, sing it where I play it." And so I sang the scale, just indulging it. And then so he tried a few more scales down, and he went up, and then he stopped, and he stared at me, stared at the keyboard, stared at the wall, stared at me again. He said, "Do you know what you are?" And I'm like, "I'm in trouble." And he's like, no, you are a countertenor. You are a natural countertenor. And I'm so happy that we figured this out. And so, of course, I asked the natural question was, well, what's a countertenor? And he said, "Well, you're also an idiot." So he gave me a couple of CDs of David Daniels, who he went to school with at Michigan, and Andrea Scholl, and that I had this Kaiser Sose moment that weekend where I finally, like, all of these alto sounds that I thought were very strange were not, various female mezzos and contraltos, but these were men. These were, and this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So from that point forward, that was me.
Thank that professor, definitely. Any other questions in the audience here? Oh, yes?
Fantastic performance. I have a very short question for you.
I'm sure
Are
you
you in any way related to Hank Mobley, very well-known jazz musician?
I am not. I encounter this quite a lot, and so I've done some digging. I'm not related to Hank Mobley, unfortunately, but I am related to Carolyn Mobley, who's my mother, and Antoinette, who's my aunt, and Christopher, who's my brother. Those Mobleys, yeah.
Anyone else? No, I think that. Oh, yes, one more, and then we'll.
Well, the only other voices are the ones in my head, ma'am. What was so great about my professor at the time was that one of the things he said in my first lesson after coming back and trying to train as a countertenor was he said to me, he's like, "No pianist will play with one hand tied behind their back. Everything that comes from you is your voice." And so he was dead set on making sure that whatever sounds I make as a singer it's all connected as the same voice. That there's an evenness and to not just the balance but also the tone and the core itself. And so from my baritone range to the top of my falsetto range, it's all me. It's all my voice. It's all Reggie, nothing else.
Amen. No, and it's true, because when you sing, you know, we do hear some tenor sounds. I mean, we hear all sorts of sounds. It's not just always the higher part of your voice, and that's exciting because not every countertenor has that ability to sing those really beautiful low notes. I think you guys have been so generous, and after this beautiful concert, that we'll let you go and either sleep or have a drink or whatever you feel like doing now. And I just want to thank you again for this beautiful show, and thank you all for staying for this chat and for coming tonight.